Business news on 4 days into the European Union's embargo on Russian oil imports, and tankers are queuing up in Turkish waters, awaiting approval to pass through the Bosphorus Straits to transport oil to Asian buyers. But the absence of Russian crude from Western markets has failed to lift global oil prices. In fact, Brent crude oil has plunged by 9% since the EU announced a price cap last week. And with many economists predicting a recession in developed markets, the price of energy could fall further. Well, for more on this story and the other business news of the day, let's cross over to Laurie Laird, Rise business correspondent, who is in London. Good to see you, Laurie. So why have these tankers been queuing up in Turkish waters?
Quite a sight, isn't it, Charles? Seeing a traffic queue of oil tankers. And the reason is that the way that the EU is imposing this ban on Russian oil is by making sure that all of the financial services, all of the oil services companies, which are based either in the EU or the UK, and that is the majority of these service companies, they are not allowed to insure these tankers unless the oil on the tankers is not going to the EU or is going somewhere else and will be sold at under $60 a barrel. Now, the Turks, these oil tankers will go from Russia through the Bosphorus Straits, which is a very, very narrow body of water. And the Turks are very rightly concerned about any kind of accident. And they want to make sure, if there is an accident, that these tankers are properly insured. So if there is a spill, if there is any incident, that they will be able to reclaim on insurance. So the paperwork that is associated with transporting this oil has become a lot more onerous.
Well, so we're learning that crude prices have fallen, though, Laurie. I mean, does this mean the EU's measures are working?
At the moment, Charles, and oil is a very volatile commodity, but at the moment, these sanctions or the ban on oil coming into the EU, along with the price cap, seems to be working exactly as the EU and the G7 had hoped. Oil is leaving Russia, and the average price of a Russian barrel of oil is trading at about $54 a barrel. So that allows Russia to make money, but not excess profit. So this is exactly what the authorities had hoped would happen. The one thing they didn't want to do was have Russia say, this isn't profitable anymore. We are actually going to stop production. But I am a little bit surprised at the behavior of oil prices since this cap was announced. And Charles, you said we're down about 9% since the announcement. Over the past, I'd say 25 minutes or so, we've gone down another 2% on the day. Brent crude oil, which is the global benchmark, had been up a little bit today, about 1.5%. We're now down more than 2%, below $76 a barrel. So that brings the fall since the cap was announced to almost 10% and almost 20% since the day before Russia invaded Ukraine. Crude oil is now at its lowest point since late 2021.
Well, let's turn to the trial of Wirecard executives, which has begun in Munich. Laurie, I understand it's the biggest fraud trial in German history. Just remind us a little bit about the scandal, which essentially involved fraud and market manipulation.
Things, Charles. This is a complicated story, but a fascinating one nonetheless. Wirecard came almost out of nowhere in the late 1990s, and it set itself up as a payment system, and it got its start in some of the more, let's say, colorful areas of the economy. It facilitated payments for online pornography, for gambling. It then grew up a little bit. We're looking at the German stock exchange at the moment, and Wirecard was at one point listed on the German stock exchange. In fact, it was one of the top 30 well-capitalized stocks when it hit its stride. But it did move into the mainstream and became a payments company. In fact, it actually wanted to become a bank. At one point, it talked about perhaps buying Commerzbank, which is the second biggest German retail bank and a big company. At one point, it was worth more than $40 billion euros. However, after some investigation and credit where credit it's due, it was the Financial Times that began looking into this. Although I have some financier friends who were always a little bit dubious about where the actual money for Wirecard was coming from. And it turned out that money that Wirecard said existed never did. They said that there were almost 2 billion euros plunked in Philippine banks after investigations came to be. These Philippine banks said, we've never heard of Wirecard. We have no relationship with them, and we're not holding 2 billion euros on their account. Shortly after that, the company completely collapsed. But big political implications here, Charles. Angela Merkel, who was then chancellor right before Wirecard collapsed, really bigged them up. She tried to market for them, tried to lobby for them on a trip to China when Wirecard was looking at buying financial assets there. And I think crucially, after hearing information, these allegations against Wirecard that again originally appeared in the Financial Times, German regulators refused to investigate. In fact, they started investigating the journalists who were chasing this story.
Well, it sounds like an incredibly serious case, and which, as you said, has broader implications for German industry. Just very briefly, just to help us look in on another long-running story, industrial action intensifying in the UK. We've got about 30 seconds.
Absolutely. And in terms of rail, there will be a rail strike almost every day from now until after Christmas. But I think the big development over the past couple of days has been that border control will now go on strike for between the 23rd and the 26th of December. So anyone hoping to fly into the UK to spend Christmas with family, please prepare yourself for a very, very long wait. But I think that the bigger picture here is that Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, sort of on the campaign trail, ignored the threat of industrial action in the UK. And this will be one of his biggest challenges in the weeks and months to come.
Laurie, thanks very much indeed. Laurie Laird, Arise business correspondent, talking to me there from London.